This video is to explain to you in detail about the video game project that we're doing with the Red Pyramid. So the goal of this project is that you are to recreate with your group a journey that Carter and Sadie take in the Red Pyramid for a video game. So you're playing a role in this project. Your role is that of a software engineer. You're currently working as a video game designer with a major software company. And your department, which is the rest of your group, has been asked to interpret Rick Riordan's popular novel, The Red Pyramid, in a new video game for your company to produce and market. The audience for the game is going to be the general consumer. Your proposal, because this is not, you're not going to actually design a video game, you're just creating a proposal for a video game. And so that proposal is going to be presented to the company executives and the board of directors. And that will be at the next major meeting, which is scheduled in early January. So that would be when we come back from break, is when you'll actually do your presentation as a group. The audience for your game is the general consumer, most likely children between the ages of 10 and 12. So the audience is you in your real life. You will need to convince your supervisor, the company president, and the board of directors to develop, produce, and market your proposed game. So your department is in competition with some other groups as to who can design the best game. The situation is that your company is facing financial difficulty in a highly competitive market and is on the verge of bankruptcy. So if it doesn't market a highly profitable game soon, the company will have to close and you will be without a job. So your team is competing to have your proposed game selected, save your company, and potentially earn a major bonus. The product is a proposal for a video game. And the purpose is to promote Rick Riordan's series, The Kane Chronicles, and to save your company. So you're going to be assessed in this project on your product, which is the game design, and your oral presentation. So the product must meet the following standards on the spec sheet. So if we go to that. Okay. Blow this up for you. Here we go. So the game's going to include 2 levels for each team member. So for every person in your group, they're going to design 2 levels. We're going to divide it in half. So the first level of the game is going to be based on events in the exposition and the initiating conflict in the story. So that would basically be Chapter 2, Chapter 1, and Chapter 2. So the start of the story. The last level in your game will be the climax of the book. We haven't gotten there yet. So all the additional levels in between will be based on events in your story that your team determines are the most important and or the most interesting. So each level is going to include an accurate setting for events, new characters that should be introduced, a title for the level that is unique and different from the book's title, and Carter or Sadie must be available on every level. So the way this is going to work is your levels will be based on chapters in the book. You're not going to do every chapter in the book. So when you get together as a group and you decide on your first round of levels, so one person in your group is going to do level 1, one person is going to do level 2, one person will do level 3, one person will do level 4 if there's 4 in your group. And then you'll decide which chapters you want to do. So they're not going to be chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4. It could be chapter 2, chapter 6, chapter 10, and chapter 19. So you're going to pick which chapters you want to do in your game. You're not going to do all of them. Now, the maximum number of chapters your level can be based on is 2. You can't do any more than 2 chapters on a level. So if you wanted to do 10 and 11, or you wanted to do 18 and 19, you could do that, but you can't do more than that. So part of the challenge of this project is deciding which chapters you want to include and how are you going to get the elements of the story in that are important if you're not including all the chapters. So for example, If you're not going to include chapter 18, which is when they get the book, how are they going to get the book later on in your game? Are they going to be able to buy it from a store? Is it going to be turn up somewhere? Do they have to find it in some other way? All of which is fine, but those are things to think about. That's part of the challenge of this project. So you will be given, each individually, a sheet that you're going to use for your proposal to write up and tell me what the game level is going to be like. Okay. In addition to that, every character that's in your game will get what we call a stat sheet. So this is where, like a drop down in a game, you can pick characters that you want to be, and it gives you some background and biography on those characters. So you'll have to do that for each of your characters on a level. And you're going to draw a picture of each of the characters on your level as well. Okay, so that we have the little boxes, drop down boxes. And those stat sheets will include the picture of the character, an age if known. We know the age of some of our characters, we don't of others. Talents and skills that they have, special abilities, and any special kind of equipment or anything that is a symbol of theirs you might want to include as well. The game level write-ups, in terms of how the level is going to actually work, will include the goal of the level. So what's the goal of the level to complete it and move on, the ultimate goal? How points will be accumulated or lost, how lives will be accumulated or lost, and tasks to be completed on the level. So, for example, you kind of categorize different kinds of tasks. Carter and Sadie might have to gather items, different items, find things. They might have to defeat enemies. They might have to complete certain tasks. So maybe they have to, solve puzzles or negotiate a maze or lock up Dr. Martin, something like that would be a task. Maybe they're going to gain some knowledge information. So, chapter 7, they learned about the demon days and the gods. In chapter 18, they learn their hosting gods. So there's different information that can be gained through the course of a level. And how are they going to do that? They can use magic. I would expect them on a lot of the levels to be using magic. So how do they get those spells? How do you use those spells? Do they have to solve puzzles? Do they have to negotiate a maze? So those are some different kind of categories. And the task and goal of the level should be based on events in the story, but your team can take and should take creative liberties to design a fun and interesting game. So it should not be follow exactly the story. You should take the basic idea of what happens and then twist it a little bit to make it into a video game and a little bit more fun to be a video game. So there's certain things that we do in a game. For example, you need power. Maybe they have to collect things on every level in order to gain power in the game, which isn't really part of the book. But hopefully whatever it is they're doing to get power would somehow relate to the book. So that's how we twist it up and make it and feel like a game. When you do your oral presentation, you should be prepared to explain your reasoning for the choices you made in your game and why they're different from the story. Okay, so that's what it'll be, and it will become clear as we go through. We do it step by step, what you need to do, and the sheet will take you through a lot of it. So that's the written piece of it. The oral piece of it, you're going to be assessed on your visual display and components, and I have examples around the room of past year's displays for you. You're going to have to provide an explanation for your game and your oral presentation and your individual level. So you'll go up as a group and everyone presents their own level, explaining what happens on their level. Somebody has to do an introduction, and somebody has to do a conclusion. And in your introduction, I would expect you to include the platform you're designing your game for and the goals of the game, as well as in the conclusion. You should be focused, your presentation should be focused with descriptions, facts, details, and examples of your level. You should use appropriate eye contact, adequate volume so we can hear you, and clear pronunciation of words so we can understand you. And you should be able to explain your interpretation, creative, and artistic choices that you made. So you'll be taking questions from the audience and from me when you finish your presentation to be able to explain what you did and why you did it. In general, I find students find this to not be as difficult of an oral presentation as they might initially think it's going to be, because you design the game. So you know your game, you know what your intention with your game is, so to be able to explain it isn't as hard as learning something brand new is, and then trying to explain that. Okay, so this is the rubric. It's divided into 3 sections. So we have a required elements section, an elements of fiction is what I'm calling it section, which is where I grade your actual game level proposal, and then your oral presentation. So if we look at required elements, the game title, this is a group grade. What did you name your game? So it should not be the Red Pyramid video game. Hopefully it'll be something more creative than that, but still, applies to the story. The characters that you've included. So not including Carter and Sadie, there should be at least 20 additional characters used amongst everybody. So if there's 4 in your group, that would be 5 per person, and there's 2 levels, so 2 to 3 additional characters in each level is what you're looking at to get to 20, okay, if you followed my math. The game design as a group game, so you are consistently using the same platform. You're all writing for Xbox or PlayStation or an app on your phone or a computer game, and that you've carried certain elements throughout. So on every level, you're gathering power in the same way. You're earning points and losing points in the same way, earning lives and losing lives in the same way. Your required elements, so you have a planning sheet for each level. You use chapter 2 as your first level and the climax as your last level. You've included the Book of Thoth, and then 2 things that we haven't gotten to yet, which is the Feather of Truth and Set Secret Name. So when we get to them, those will make sense. You have to include those in your game design as well. And then the mechanics. So I'm looking specifically that the character names are capitalized and spelled correctly, that the places are capitalized and spelled correctly, and you've used key terms correctly and spelled those correctly as well. Like Shabti, I would expect you to spell right, okay, spell correctly. So this is an individual grade. The rest of it is a group grade, okay, and it totals 20 points out of 100. Then we have the rubric I'm using for your actual levels. This is entirely an individual grade. Everybody will be graded individually and they're designed for their level. What level did you do in your game? Did you do level 2 and 7? So you do 1 rubric for each level. And then I'm going to look at the title for your level. So if you're basing it on chapter 18, let's say, which is, when fruit bats go bad, the title of your level should somehow relate to that but be different. And I'm looking to see it's adequate but different, or interesting and creative, etc. That you have fully developed and explained the setting, so that the setting details are similar to what is in the book. The tasks and goals, that you've been creative in adapting what happens in the book to game design. It includes multiple elements, so you're doing more than 3 or 4 of these different things in the level. So multiple things are going on in the level, versus, maybe you've only done 1 or 2 of these things. That's going to be down here. So, and how well did you explain it? Can I follow what's going on in the level? This is a step-by-step description of exactly what happens in the level. The characters that you've included in the level, so did you include at least 3 additional new characters that haven't been included by somebody else? Versus 2 versus 1 character. And then the characters are described, including skills and equipment. And then when you do the pictures, that the pictures were creative and detailed and colored. Okay, so there's a total of 21 points available to you for each level. So that's 42 points total as an individual part of the grade. And then finally, you have your oral presentation. And the oral presentation, this is the second It's the same, exact same, just for the second level that you do. And then the oral presentation. So I'm looking at the visual poster that you guys are going to end up doing of all your pictures, the game title, the way you laid it out, etc. How creative is that? That as you present your content, that you individually, this is an individual grade, as you present your content and your level, that I can see that you have knowledge of the storyline and characters. As you answer the questions, it's clear that you understand the storyline and the characters, and that you are able to be accurate and specific with facts from the story. That you can defend your choices. You're able to explain why you did things in focused and coherent manner and give a logical reason for it. You know, and not say, I don't know why I did that, right? Like, why did you choose to do something? So being able to have a logical reason for it. And then body language, you stand up straight, you look relaxed, you make eye contact, that you speak loudly and clearly, you're pronouncing your words correctly so we can understand you. You seem prepared in practice at style, flow, and rhythm. The flow is continuous. You don't have to repeat. Your transitions are smooth. Your tone conveys that you're excited about your project. That's very important, okay? That you sound excited, that you like your game, and that your group has an introduction and conclusion that's appropriate. So that is a group grade, and the first part, the actual poster presentation, is a group grade. The rest of your presentation is an individual grade. That's 28 points total. So the majority of your grade is based on individual, with a portion, about, I think, if I totaled it up, I'm thinking it's about 30% would be group grade. The rest of it is all based on your individual work. Okay? If you have any questions about how you're being graded, you should ask me in class. You should definitely have the rubric out as you're designing your game level. Again, referring to the rubric in terms of how well you're doing as you go along.